from Fox Sports and SI.com, Bruce Feldman. How are you, Bruce?
I'm doing great, Rich. Good to be on with you.
Well, latest example, Urban Meyer knows his team better than most, right? I mean, everyone says, let's get JT out after Oklahoma, the loss to OU, and Baker Mayfield's planting a flag in the middle of the field, and maybe they should move on to a five-star recruit. And Urban's like, hold your horses. What a performance by JT Barrett.
It was, and a couple of those passes that were incomplete were actually good passes that were dropped. I think it should be pointed out that when they struggled against OU earlier in the year, it was early on in the process of JT Barrett and that offense getting assimilated with new offensive coordinator Kevin Wilson and new quarterback coach Ryan Day. And you saw some of the plays that they have really kind of juiced up this Ohio State offense were things that Ryan Day had brought in, things that Kevin Wilson had brought in. And you saw a team, quite honestly, that just was more talented. And a lot of this game, I think, was won on signing days as much as anything, where the gap between Ohio State's talent on both lines compared to where Penn State's at was pretty evident. And Saquon Barkley and Trace McSorley, eventually it caught up to them.
Yeah. So is there a formula now to beat Penn State, do you think?
Yeah, have a great defensive line that's so much more talented than their offensive line, and as good as Michigan's front is, I think that there were a couple of wrinkles there and that caught them off guard that Penn State was able to exploit. They had the bye week to set some of that stuff up. But the other thing is, as good as Michigan's defensive front seven is, Ohio State's is even better. And I think we saw an example of that. And also, quite honestly, JT Barrett is much better than what the Wolverines have at this point. And I think that was the difference, and that's what Penn State was dealing with Saturday.
Well, let's talk about Bruce Feldman of Fox Sports, SI.com, about how the rest of the Big Ten is gonna shape up. You just mentioned my alma mater. Brandon Peters finally got in a game, and the offense looked completely different. And I understand that was Rutgers on the other side of the ball. Harbaugh, with a wink and a nod towards the media, says there's a 51% chance of him starting again. What do you think here, Bruce?
You got to ride him out and see what he can do for you. It gives you a little bit more time, obviously, to get him some seasoning, to get ready for the big game. The offensive line still has to gel, and I think there's, you see a very young receiving core with a, kind of a patchwork offensive line coming together. It's just a lot of moving parts for them, and they've had some growing pains. So, look, I always thought that this team was a year away from being a real playoff contender, and that's the way it looks. But, now you're going to have Brandon Peters get, looks like at least a month here to really audition and try to see if he can take control of this job before what I imagine was going to happen in the spring, where it's going to be him and Dylan McCaffrey kind of squaring off. It gives him a head start on that.
Well, and one of the reasons why I bring this up is because Michigan sits there on Wisconsin's remaining schedule. Ohio State does not. Neither does Penn State, by the way. So what about Wisconsin sitting there undefeated? What do you think their chances are from here on out to not only win the Big Ten, but the playoffs, et cetera?
Well, they don't have much margin for error. We had the Badgers a few weeks ago. They're really good. I just, they were banged up at the receiving core. The game we had them against Maryland, they only had 3 scholarship receivers. But Jonathan Taylor, their freshman running back, he is a stud. And they're really good on defense. They're really well coached. I think they'll beat Iowa, but Iowa could give them a game. And then you look at the rest of the schedule. I mean, they have no margin for error because the schedule is so just mediocre, to be honest. I mean, that's what you have in the Big Ten West. But if they can go out of there undefeated and then find a way to knock off, who we think will be at this point Ohio State, they're going to get in the playoff because beating Ohio State at that point, certainly, I think Michigan will probably be a top 25 team, but with the schedule they have left, there's no certainty that they will. So, this team may not have any wins over any ranked teams in the committee's eyes before they get to the Big Ten title game. But again, if you're undefeated and you come out of a conference that has Penn State and Ohio State in it, and you're undefeated, I still think it would be hard to get left out.
Bruce Feldman, SI.com, Fox Sports, joining me here on the Rich Eisen Show. And now after Georgia destroys Florida, which we'll get to in a second, there is no Alabama on their schedule as well remaining. So that looks to be a matchup in the big SEC championship game unless Auburn or South Carolina could do something, Kentucky and Georgia Tech surprising. Is there any chance that the loser of that SEC championship game just makes it anyway, that won't matter? What do you think?
Yeah, I think there is a chance because if you look at what Georgia has, especially the way Notre Dame is playing, Notre Dame steamrolled both USC and NC State, who are top 25 teams. They went to South Bend and beat the Irish. That's a really good win for Georgia. And if they can be competitive and they lose the game, I think there's going to be a lot of people going, you know what, this is one of the 4 best teams. I don't know how you would take Notre Dame if they go 11-1 and Georgia goes 12-1 and Georgia beat them at their place, even if it was only by a point, and their losses to Alabama. I don't know how you would take the Irish over Georgia. I think that's a tough sell. I think Notre Dame's schedule probably has more good opponents in it. I mean, we'll see, because again, there's a lot to be played out. But right now, Mississippi State's 6-2, and Georgia beat the heck out of them. So I mean, that win could look, if Mississippi State goes 9-3, that's another pretty good win for Georgia. So I think there's a chance, especially with, we don't know what we're getting. The Pac-12 looks like they have a good chance of getting shut out. And we'll see what happens with the Big 12 as the way this thing plays out. You could have the two get left out.
Right. So let's hold our horses for a second. What do you think LSU's chances against Alabama would be this weekend?
Not very good.
Okay.
I mean, they're a 3-touchdown underdog. They're really young. They're young on the offensive line. That's not good to go into Tuscaloosa. And they do have Darius Geis close to 100%. He is a superstar running back. But I don't know if they're going to, even with him, I don't think the offensive line, starting 2 true freshmen, is going to be able to run it. And then they're going to have to lean on Danny Etling. I just don't think Danny Etling can go into Tuscaloosa and knock off the Tide.
Well, I mean, if Miami beats Virginia Tech under the Saturday Night Lights this week, and then what a huge game with Notre Dame. It's been a long, long time since Miami and Notre Dame meant so much. How can you keep an undefeated Hurricanes team out of this mix, Bruce?
Well, at this point, they haven't beaten anybody who's any good, and they struggled the other day with a 1-8 UNC team. I mean, they've kind of skated by people. I think it's, what Mark Richt has done there and that staff. They're recruiting well. They're building. I think it's been very impressive. But I think we got to pump the brakes on any Miami is back talk. I mean, I said this for a while. Miami's back when they win a national title. They're not back when they win, beat a top 25 opponent. They have a ways to go to get to that point. Let's see if they can, beat Virginia Tech, who's good, and then win the ACC title. I mean, that's a big step, but for all, Miami's been in the ACC for now a long time. They haven't even got to the title game yet.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're going to start, again, we're so far away, but why not? Let's have fun. If you're going to start looking at what's in a game that people would want to watch in a nationally televised semifinal game, and last couple of years, based on when these games have been played, have been ratings challenged, why wouldn't you want to put undefeated Miami against undefeated Georgia and see how that works? Come on
look,
now.
If Miami is undefeated, that means they would have beaten Virginia Tech. That game will carry some weight with the committee. And also, if they beat Clemson to get to the title game, those are good wins.
Okay.
They just haven't done it to this point. They've kind of snuck by teams. But if they get those 2 wins, hey, then all of a sudden there's going to be a lot more chips on the table, and people are going to start taking notice. I mean, they're good on defense. They have speed. I think people are still a little reluctant to see Malik Rozier, the young quarterback, just how really good he is.
Okay, couple minutes left with FoxSportsSI.com's Bruce Feldman. What happened in Florida? What happened there?
There was so much tension with Jim McElwain and his bosses. They had really got tired of a lot of things. They're in a lot of frustration. It came to a head last week. Jim McElwain kind of blindsided them when he referenced getting death threats, and then they called his bluff and said that, put out a statement. And remember, Scott Strickland, the Florida AD, who was an old sports information guy, so he knows how things play publicly. He put out a statement that basically said they asked McElwain about it, and he didn't offer any further details. From what I had heard on Saturday night, there were people high up at Florida who said, we do not want to have Jim McElwain in front of any more podiums representing the University of Florida. At that point, it was like, how do we get to a point where we can, deal with his buyout and manage this and have an exit strategy, because they were done with him, and now they're moving on. The search committee started. The search started today, and we'll see what they can get, because it's a really good job. So
anyone with Florida roots? Is it possible? Will they knock on Mike Shanahan's door and say, would you want to come back in college football?
I think the timing, at his age, I'm not sure that's the route they would want to go. Look, Dan Mullen used to work, his old boss is now the AD at Florida. When they were together at Mississippi State, Mullen used to work at at UF. I could see them looking at him. I could see them looking at Willie Taggart, who's now at Oregon, who's got a lot of connections around Florida. I could see them looking at Scott Frost. I also could see them considering Chip Kelly, because Chip Kelly's kind of the white whale in this coaching season this winter. And now he would have to get cleared by the commissioner of the SEC, Greg Sankey. They would need his blessing. But I think that's something that could be worked around. If Florida feels very comfortable with Chip Kelly, and this is the most innovative coach that they would have a chance to get.
Yeah, I'm sure they can work that around 1,000%. So last one. Does this mean McElwain's barbecue sauce is no longer for sale in that stadium, Bruce?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's out. That's out.
That's out. Okay. Thanks for dialing in, Bruce. Always love your insight. Chat soon.
My pleasure, Rich.
You bet. At Bruce Feldman, CFB on Twitter.
For more Rich Eisen Show, tune to Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV or download the Rich Eisen Show app.